This video is brought to you by GiveWell. On Saturday, President-elect Donald Trump tweeted this, threatening 100% tariffs against the so-called BRICS countries unless they agreed not to create a new currency as an alternative to compete with the US dollar. Now, this might sound a bit out of the blue to some of our viewers, but it comes after months of mounting speculation, at least in certain corners of the internet, about a new BRICS-led attempt to usurp the dollar as the world's reserve currency. So, in this video, we're going to take another look at the dollar's reserve status, why the BRICS don't like it, and why the US is probably more of a threat to the dollar than anyone else.
Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos.
So let's just start with a bit of context. BRICS is an acronym referring to Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. The term was first coined by a Goldman Sachs analyst in 2001, although it didn't originally include South Africa. But in 2006, Putin organized a BRICS ministerial meeting on the sidelines of a UN General Assembly, and in 2009, Russia hosted the first BRICS summit, which has since become an annual event. The grouping has expanded over the years too. South Africa joined in 2010, and 4 more countries, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and the UAE, joined in 2024. This expanded group is sometimes known as BRICS Plus, and they represent around 45% of the world's population and 35% of global GDP in purchasing power terms. Anyway, the BRICS are often framed as a sort of non-Western counterpoint to the G7. Like the G7, they're more of a discussion forum than anything else, but a recurring theme at BRICS summits is their mutual irritation about the dominance of the US dollar, or more specifically, the dollar's status as the world's reserve currency. What this means is that the dollar is the primary currency held by central banks and financial institutions around the world in their foreign exchange reserves, largely because it's considered safe and reliable and because America is a massive open economy. The dollar's status as the world's most popular currency has some downstream consequences that are generally considered to privilege the US. It means that the dollar is stronger than it otherwise would be if its value was determined by trade patterns alone, allowing the US to import more stuff, although this does undermine American manufacturing, which is why Trump also wants to devalue the dollar. It means there's more demand for dollar-denominated assets, especially US debt, which means the US government can borrow more money than other countries, and that US treasuries form the backbone of the global financial system. It means most international trade, especially commodity trade, is denominated in dollars, even when neither party is the US, which protects the US from fluctuations in exchange rates. And it means the US can unilaterally impose financial sanctions, thanks to the world's reliance on dollar finance and the American banking system. While America's enemies and even allies have long complained about various bits of the setup since at least the 1960s, as the US has started using sanctions more and more often, anxieties about the dollar's reserve status have escalated, sparking recurring chatter about some sort of BRICS-inspired alternative to the dollar, which has apparently got under Trump's skin. So, are Trump's anxieties legitimate? Could BRICS really usurp the dollar? Well, no, probably not. Generally speaking, usurping reserve currencies is difficult, thanks to the enormous network effects. In other words, everyone accepts dollars because, well, everyone accepts dollars. So recipient parties know that they can use their dollars for whatever they want later on, and are therefore happy to be paid in them. People have been talking about the dollar's demise since at least the 1970s, when US President Richard Nixon delinked the dollar from gold. But, well, the dollar is still here, and basically as strong as ever. While its share of foreign exchange reserves has fallen slightly over the past 2 decades, it still accounts for the vast majority of foreign exchange transactions, and an even larger share of all non-US debt. The only time a truly global reserve currency has been usurped was in the early 20th century, when the pound was replaced by the dollar. But that took 2 world wars, and was largely driven by the fact that the UK owed the US tons of dollars after the wars. But while usurping a reserve currency is generally difficult, BRICS will have an especially hard time of it. For starters, the only BRICS currency with a strong or large enough economy to challenge the dollar is China, but there are a number of reasons the yuan isn't a popular reserve currency. For starters, the Chinese state still limits the amount of money coming in and out of the country, and investors obviously don't like holding their cash in a country where they can't always get it out. But on top of that, China might not even want the yuan to replace the dollar. First, it would make it harder to actively devalue the yuan, which China does to keep its exports competitive. And second, it would imply a massive rebalancing of international trade. Without the world's reserve currency, the US wouldn't import so much, which means it wouldn't be so dependent on Chinese exports, which China quite likes. That would explain why, after trying to internationalize the yuan in the late 2010s by lending yuan to Belt and Road countries, China has essentially given up, and most Belt and Road loans are now denominated in dollars. There has been some talk about some sort of joint BRICS currency, perhaps based on a weighted basket of foreign currencies or even commodities like gold, but this would be complicated, and nothing's come of it yet. Similarly, at the last meeting, Putin tried to get the other countries to sign up to his new interbank messaging system, known as BRICS Bridge, which he framed as an alternative to the US-led SWIFT system, claiming it would insulate them from the threat of American sanctions. Unfortunately, his proposal received a muted reaction from the other BRICS members, both because it offers little more than a pre-existing interbank system called mBridge, run by the Swiss-based Bank for International Settlements, and because other BRICS members are worried about being sanctioned by America if they help Russia set up a parallel financial system. This speaks to a wider problem for BRICS. The grouping is just too ideologically diverse to agree to anything substantial. India, for instance, is nowhere near as desperate to ditch the dollar as, say, Russia, and so Modi is never going to sign up to Russia's more harebrained schemes, especially if they risk American retaliation. This problem will only become more acute if BRICS continues to expand. To be honest, the main threat to the dollar probably comes from the US itself. Isolating the US economically via tariffs, escalating sanctions, politicizing the Federal Reserve, borrowing unsustainable amounts of federal debt, and, well, sending blackmail tweets demanding people use the dollar all risk undermining confidence in the dollar's perceived security and therefore its reserve status. Now, when you make a big purchase, say a car or a new mattress, how do you make sure that you're making the right choice? You could rely on all of the marketing copy in the product's ads, but many people find they need an independent resource that's rigorous and trustworthy. Today's sponsor, GiveWell, provides that independent resource for a different kind of purchase, a donation. For over 15 years, GiveWell has been researching charitable organizations and only directs funding to a few of the highest impact opportunities that they've found. That's things like bed nets to prevent malaria. It costs about $5 to provide one net. Nets can reduce the number of malaria infections, and enough nets and a large enough drop in infections can save a life in expectation. Together, over 100,000 donors have used GiveWell to donate more than $1 billion. Rigorous evidence suggests that these donations will save over 150,000 lives and improve the lives of millions more. GiveWell wants as many donors as possible to make informed decisions about high-impact giving. You can find all of their research and recommendations on their site for free. You can make tax-deductible donations to their recommended funds or charities, and GiveWell doesn't take a cut. I particularly like GiveWell as it ensures that your money is doing the most it can to help those the most in need. Here at TLDR, we're big believers in doing research to find out what's really going on, and that's exactly the approach that GiveWell takes to charities. If you've never donated to GiveWell's recommended charities before, you can have your donation matched up to $100 before the end of the year, or as long as matching funds last. To claim your match, go to givewell.org and pick YouTube and enter TLDR News at checkout. Make sure they know that you heard about GiveWell from TLDR News to get your donation matched. Again, that's givewell.org to donate or find out more.